So my transition into full-time content creation wasn't necessarily by choice.
All right, well, welcome everyone. This is another episode of The Creative Path. I'm here today and very excited to talk to Mr. Benjamin Brown, aka Mr. Mackenzie, and we're going to get a little bit into what I find to be a very personally resonating topic, which is kind of that world of being a content creator alongside a full-time family man, which is the main job,
Yep.
the main career there. And just the whole dynamic of how that experience works for many of us who are trying to balance a busy personal life with some creative goals. So, really excited to talk to you today, Ben. Really appreciate you hopping on. And what I like to do is just, for the audience, anyone that's not maybe familiar with
hmm
you, just connecting for the first time, just go ahead and share just a brief intro and let the folks know who you are.
Yeah. So real name is Benjamin Brown. I live in South Carolina. And I go by Mr. Mackenzie, MR underscore MACKENZIE. I know it's a long one. That's actually my middle name. I
Okay.
used to hate that name growing up. I hated the name Mackenzie. I just, it was like a kind of a unisex name. I was like, man, that's kind of a girl's name, blah, blah, blah. But now I've gotten older. I've really embraced it. I really like that that's part of my identity. 'Cause it's actually part of, my mom told me the story of why that's my middle name. Because my grandfather was a logger and a trucker. He always drove Mack trucks. So she wanted to find a way to name me after him, but without giving me his name. So I ended up with the middle name Mackenzie. So a little creative way to name me after my grandpa.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
yeah, so I really tried to embrace that and kind of all my personal brand identities and usernames across the spectrum. But I am, as you said, a father first. I'm a husband. I've got two kids. They're 3 and about to be 6. So I'm in the trenches right now with
Mm,
kids. We had our first
mm-hmm.
one in 2020. And I've been creating content now as a profession, like kind of as a side hustle since like 2020, 2021. And now as full time, we can kind of get into, you probably hear my kids in the background. They are yelling right now. So
Have to include them
we,
in the
yeah,
episode for
we,
sure.
we don't get a lot of quiet time. I'm literally upstairs on the other side of the house. With like a noise canceling mic and you can still hear 'em. But
Hmm. They're doing their
that's the
job,
life we
Ben.
live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing their job. They're being kids. And so I've been a content creator since 2020, 2021-ish, right around when we had our first kid. Before that, I was making videos on the side. Just got my first camera in probably 2008, I want to say 2007, 2008. I got it started out with a Nikon D90. It was like one of the first mirrorless or DSLR cameras that would shoot video.
Oh,
Had a
nice.
friend that had one and just got into doing that, into photography as a side hobby. And then, like I said, started making videos and kind of fell in love with doing like family videos. Started with vacations and honeymoons and special events, and then got really into making fitness content for a while. I was a competitive power lifter for several years, so I was just documenting my training and sharing that. And then when we started getting ready to have kids, I discovered the parenting space, right? Talking about fatherhood and gear and stuff that we were going to buy, and I found that it was super helpful for me. I kind of stumbled across a couple dad channels. There's a lot of moms in the space, right, making content about strollers and carriers and what do you need. And I knew from the way I grew up, I really wanted to be a super involved father, right? I wanted to help make all the decisions. I wanted to know what we were buying. I wanted to be able to uh, be well informed when we were making those choices. And so because of that, we saw that kind of need. I was like, you look around and it's like, okay, you see a lot of moms reviewing stuff. And I was like, well, I have a camera and I've been on radio before. I can present things. So I started making dad content.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I got partnered up with the guys over at Dad Verb. Shout out to them. So if you've ever stumbled across that YouTube channel, it's like 180,000 subscribers. It's all about fatherhood, gear reviews, kind of family tech, all that stuff. We launched a podcast a couple of years ago. We've done about 100 episodes of that where we talk about fatherhood. So again, all this was part time. So the podcast, making videos on the side, building up my personal brand on Instagram was all on the side. Along with my 9 to 5. So full time corporate career for 16, 17 years working in healthcare and banking and all kinds of spaces. And we'll kind of, I think we can kind of get into how I ended up as a full-time creator, but that's really my background is I saw videos, I thought I could do it, and it's been a fun experiment ever since then.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a lot. I didn't know about you particularly. Just the start. I think, like you, many people get their hands on a camera for the first time. They start to experiment a little bit. They may be influenced by some of their friends and,
Hmm.
get into the world of photography. And then eventually, as things have just evolved on social, I think that the content creation world has drawn more and more people in who are, doing their own thing, doing something completely opposite. And I didn't know you were a power lifter as well. What was
Yeah.
the experience with that? How many years were you involved with
Uh,
powerlifting?
I did that so I always trained. I played some sports in high school, ran track in college, and then just really got into lifting. My dad was a bodybuilder back in the day, and I was always kind of a skinny kid. So I was just like, hey, let's get in. I wanted to, I was in college. I was like, I want to get a little bigger, a little buffer, look a little
Hmm.
badder. So started lifting there, and then I found some friends of mine were getting into powerlifting, so I started doing that. I did that for probably 5 or 6 years. Did several competitions, the regional level. Nothing crazy, but it was fun. It was a really cool community. Before I had kids, when I had time to train, 2, 3 hours a day, something like that, it was a really cool community to be a part of. And it was fun to create content around, right? Just to document your journey from, because you have something called your total, right? Which is your squat, bench, and
Hmm.
deadlift.
Hmm.
And you're training and training and training all these hours and all this time and what you're eating and what you're doing and how you're training and all the things you're learning. It's fun to share that because there's a lot of people out there who are either just getting started, like in any space, just getting started. So everything that you learn is going to be helpful
Yeah.
to somebody else, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think I say this all the time. Whatever practice, lifestyle, skill that people are involved with, being able to share some insight into that, share some knowledge, and help other people who are getting started is just like a practical, logical thing to do
Hmm.
for most people. Also, I find fitness to be so uh, goal oriented that I think it applies a lot of similar principles when it comes to maybe the discipline of content creation, building a brand, in any type of work where
Yeah, for
you
sure.
really need to have some consistency, some regular output in order to meet some of those goals. So yeah, I've also been like a huge fitness guy throughout my life, and have taken some of that. And you mentioned that during your time there, were you actually documenting other fitness folks and some people you were associated
Yeah.
with?
Yeah, some of it. So we would train, we go to like different conferences and whatnot and do different clinics. So it's fun to get to meet a lot of people in that space. So from strongman and kind of powerlifting, it was cool. These are names that like, unless you're inside powerlifting, most people are not going to know, but like Chad Wesley Smith, he runs Juggernaut Training, but he's got like a crazy, crazy total. He's like one of the strongest people on the planet.
Mm,
But training with him was super fun and documenting that. I think what it did, and I think the important thing about content too is like either powerlifting, training and fitness, or creating content can be very lonely, right? Like it's one of those things like most of my work happens here, right? I'm in a spare bedroom in my house. I've converted this into my studio, but the majority of my work happens by myself in my house with no other people.
mm, mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that can be a very lonely endeavor when you're trying to build up this online community of people that you don't ever really see or meet or touch base with, like we're doing right now. Powerlifting's the same. You can go in, train, put your headphones in, and never talk to anybody, and it can be a challenge to build that community up. And I think that's so important, whether you're doing it online or doing it in person, to build that community.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, that's how you're going to learn, right? And two, meeting up with other people who are doing the same thing as you gives you an opportunity to learn from each other, just to connect and be realize like kind of where your tribe is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big part of why I started documenting that journey, was just to find other people. And the same reason that I do stuff like this, like podcast interviews, or just connecting with other creators in real life. Getting up with people and just saying like, either let's go shoot or let's just meet for coffee, just so we can bounce ideas off each other and learn. I think that's such an important thing that we don't do enough of, for sure.
Yeah, no, I 1,000% agree with that. It's interesting because when I first started creating, doing photography, and
Mhm.
eventually focusing more on video, I was always looking for some type of network or group, some
Mhm.
events that were going on. And over time, I found myself being a little bit more, like you said, independent, isolated. I felt maybe more confident in what I was doing. So didn't feel the need to have to leverage a community as much, but there's a huge just intrinsic like motivation that comes with that, and I think it can really energize us. So that's definitely something I'd like to lean back into. Um, but when it comes to you sort of building up your own career, your personal brand, I know you mentioned working in a 9 to 5, which I assume that was probably your initial focus and
Yeah.
trajectory, just to have a
Yeah. Yeah.
solid
For sure.
career and be stable there. But when did you really start to feel more of an inclination to make content and maybe eventually lean into that
Yeah.
full force?
So I think that started, so one of the things I'll mention, I'm 38, right? I'm a little older, right? So I'm approaching 40. I'm an elder millennial, I guess, as they call it. Um,
I'm in my mid 30s
but
too, so don't
yeah,
no
yeah.
no
So it's
shame
just
around it,
like,
man.
I know, right? So it's like, I think you get to a point in your life, especially once I had kids, that I realized I wanted something different, right? There is so much that happens. I will never belittle the work that I did in my corporate career. I think it was all really important. I think it was all stuff that allowed me to live a lifestyle that's very comfortable, right? Like I got all the stuff you get in the American dream, right? I got the house, I got the car, I have the kids, we live a very nice life. But once you have all those things, you kind of realize, especially with kids, is like you don't have the freedom to kind of do what you want when you want, work when you want. And I'm not saying that's the golden era. In content creation. Like, do I get to work exactly when I want, how I want, all the time? No, I still got to work to earn money. Um, but at the end of the day, I do have more flexibility, and that's ultimately what I wanted. Like my kids are only going to be young once. Um, and working in content has allowed me to, I get to drop them off and pick them up from school every day. I get to be there and make breakfast and see everybody out the door. I get to be, for the most part, home on weekends and home at night to go to all the events and everything like that. And to me, that was the most important thing, was having that flexibility around, especially when my kids are young, because I only get this chance once. And I
Hmm.
think, a big part of my corporate career that I really am thankful for is, for both of my kids, my company offered 16 weeks of paid paternal leave. So for both of my
Wow.
kids, I was able to take, yeah, like, 4 or 5 months off, essentially, to spend with them, which, well, yeah, I guess like 4 months. And for the crazy part is, like, my wife actually had less parental leave than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And as a dad, that's like such a rare thing to be able to spend that amount of time with your kids, especially for me, because I got a month being like the primary parent, right? Where I was home on parental leave while my wife went back to work. Um, and so for me, that really shifted a lot of my priorities and my thinking when I got to stay home. And I got to really be there for all the milestones and the events and the first steps and all that. I was like, okay, this is the thing that's important. How can I start leveraging my skills, working towards being able to do this all the time, where I am home all the time, where I'm working kind of for myself and really Instead of working for somebody else's bottom line, I'm working for my own. So that was the big transition where it kind of opened my eyes, where I was like, most of corporate America, it's like you're dealing with, the politics of people trying to, one up each other or get the promotion or climb the ladder or whatever. And it just didn't feel important to me anymore. It didn't feel like that was the thing I needed to drive towards. And so I was like, all right, so what can I start doing on the side to start moving myself towards that goal of working for myself?
Yeah. 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 No, I fully resonate with that, man. I have a corporate career that has many years behind me, and I'm expecting more to come. And there is always that little itch you get to when you're outside of your normal routine and with work, to where you do have an idea that that's something you maybe want to fully commit to and do all the
Mm.
time. And that's hard to transition into. I think for a lot of people, there's an inspiration to do it, but the
Mhm.
practicality and the reality of doing it is a challenge. What was that actual experience like? And speaking of your wife, what was her perspective on things? Like, was she understanding of that, or was she fully supportive?
Yeah.
And how did
Yeah,
that?
I mean, that's one of the things I think is so important with any of this when you're trying anything new, is having a supportive partner. My wife has been incredibly supportive throughout this entire process, throughout this entire transition, right? Is she sees something that I'm able to do and earn money at. Um, she sees that I have a plan and I'm committed to how I'm doing things and to doing them well. And I think she sees that I'm excited about this. And so she's been, as scary as it is, she's been fully on board. And I could not have made that transition without her. Now, that being said, as I said, we would kind of get into this. So my transition into full-time content creation wasn't necessarily by choice, right? So we have I think Casey Neistat talked about this idea of like the golden handcuffs, where it's like you earn enough money at your corporate job where it's like, oh, I can live really comfortably and the paycheck is the same every week. And I know exactly how much I'm going to get paid and what I can spend and all that. And it allows you to live this really comfortable lifestyle, which is fantastic. But it can also be this sort of anchor where you're like, if I wanted to do something else, man, I can't give this up. Like, I'd be stupid to give this up, right? I'd be
Mm-hmm.
stupid to give up my corporate career and give up that paycheck and the bonuses and all that stuff. Which, you work in finance, like those bonuses are significant. They're fantastic. But it's also like, I also still have to do the 7 a.m. meetings and the 6 o'clock meetings. And, again, dealing with people on power trips and politics and all that stuff. And I think so much of that, like for me, was I was developing just like a ton of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I never had a panic attack until I was 37. Had my first like anxiety attack at 37. It was just, I realized how out of alignment I was with the life that I wanted to live, even though my job was allowing me to do so much. I was able to travel, I was able to buy whatever I wanted, but I was still having this super like deep rooted anxiety. And I was like, I got to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then for me, that kind of all came to a head in November of 2025. Of course, I'd survived all these layoffs and reorganizations and all that stuff. And finally, my time came. I didn't, I got my call one day where it was like, hey, we're eliminating. And it wasn't just me, they eliminated like my entire team in one
Mm-hmm.
go.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like, I look back on it and I'm like, okay, so I had every performance review I had for a decade, right? Almost a decade was either meets or exceeds. So I was doing all the work. I was doing the late hours. I was doing the presentations to executives. I was doing all the things that I was told I needed to do to have a long term career at this company. And then when it came down to budget season, all of a sudden I became a line item on a budget. And it was like, okay, we don't need you here anymore. It's like, all right. Well, then for me, it was like I was lucky to be in a position where I was going to have, about 6 months of runway because I had been there so long. where I was still going to be getting paid, but I didn't actually have to go to the office and do anything, right? Like I was in my severance. And so I was like, okay, what do I do with this time? Do I go out into the job market, which we all know is pretty cooked right now? Like it's hard to find
Crazy.
anything in corporate America. It's crazy. Like you can put hundreds of applications in and not hear anything back. Or do I start doing this thing full time that I've been earning money with as a side hustle and really enjoy and really want to do full time? Do I really make a commitment to doing that and making that my full time job? And, after talking with my wife and kind of telling her what my plan was, she said, you know what, go for it. Like you've got the opportunity, you've got the time now to commit to it. Kind of get your ass in gear and start going.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I needed to really get started. Now, I feel like I'm in a state where things are really kind of ramping up, and have been, decently consistent enough where, we're not starving. We're not going to lose our house. We're doing okay. And I'm continuing to build that out, which is,
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great to share, and I appreciate the transparency with that, because I think there's a ton of people in similar positions where, um, especially in the corporate world, you feel like, to your point, you're at a stable place. You maybe have an extended career. You've been working for one organization for a while, but um, there is that weird dichotomy of, I don't have any control here at any particular point. My future is just a decision by someone else. So yeah, being able to pivot from that, I think, is takes a lot of self confidence and reassurance. And if you have the right partner, that can definitely give you, a nice boost, to know you're making the right steps forward. And um, sometimes I think it also is a peel the band-aid type of situation where, unless you're forced to do something, unless you're put in a position, you might not take that action. So um, but yeah, speaking of you sort of kind of growing, I think I came across your page probably, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and again, just saw a guy, not a 20-year-old,
Hmm.
who is still, experimenting, and is so young that they can make a lot of mistakes. Someone who's, got a lot of responsibility on their back, and I definitely resonated with that. But I think it was maybe like December last year, when I really started to notice your content had more of a consistent structure and tone and look and feel,
Hmm.
and there was a consistency there. What was kind of that turning point for you to make that happen?
Yeah, I think it was just figuring out. I mean, so much of your content and your personal brand is like asking yourself, who do you want to be? Like, who do I want to show up as, and who do I want to help? Not just who am I, right? But who's my audience? What are they getting out of this? How can I actually help them? And then also, what does the funnel look like for that? Like, how do I actually build this into a real income stream? And so for me, after getting laid off, after talking to a bunch of my friends, and I'd been chatting with other dads online as part of Dadverb. I saw that I really wasn't alone in the journey that I was going through, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
having the stable corporate career, and then all of a sudden that comes to an end. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, who am I when I don't have that identity of the title and the salary? And then who do I want to be? I think, I made a real, I do these things called Sunday Yaps, usually where I just record like a chat about something that I'm thinking about. And one of them, that I did recently was this question of, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like we ask our kids that all the time, right? Like, oh, I want to be an astronaut or a firefighter. And I'm realizing at 38 that, like, I still don't really know who I want to be. Like you're still in this, there's so many chapters in your life, and there's so many changes that will happen, that I think who we are is always in flux. We're always in this sort of state of becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sharing that and saying, I'm 38 and I still don't particularly know exactly who I am. I know roughly what I like, what I don't like, what I will do, what I won't do. I'm more confident in that. Um, but when you start to think about, like, what values do you have? and then who might benefit from that, who might benefit from hearing that same message to say like, look, it's okay to not have your life figured out at 25. I mean, I met my wife at 19. We didn't get married until we were 27 because between 19 and 27, we were completely different people. From 19-year-old us to nearly 30-year-old us, like we had been through so much more, we'd experienced so much more. And now, 30-year-old me to 38-year-old me before and after kids is a completely different person. I have a different perspective, a different point of view. And because that's always evolving, I think it's important to talk about that and realize like, you're not always going to know who you are and what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that state of transition is always happening. I think we need to take advantage of that and embrace it and know that like we're human beings, we're always going to be changing and growing and changing our minds about stuff, and maybe our values evolve. And so I started to think about like, well, how can I share that message? And then two, it was just expediency, right? Like efficiency. I only have so much time to create. Like my kids, I take my kids to school at 7 a.m. I bring them. By the time I'm done dropping everybody off and get back home, it's like 8. And then basically between 8 and 1:30 in the afternoon, I have to script content or create, edit, write scripts, work on brand content, possibly get a workout in, and then go pick up my kids, and then I'm back into dad mode. So basically I get like half a day. Even as a quote, full-time creator, I get about half a day to actually work on anything before, as you heard at the beginning of the episode, my kids screaming in the background, not really conducive for recording. And so I just had to be efficient. So my setup, as far as like how I have everything set up, like I have 2 shooting areas, like one here at my desk, one behind me. But I've got those all squared away now where I can just sit down and hit record and be done.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like, I feel like a lot of people get in this headspace of like, oh, I need to have a different setup, or I need to have a different lighting setup, or this, that, or the other. And it's like, whatever is the most efficient for you, go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's going to allow you to, instead of thinking about your setup, just go, I have this idea, I want to record it, sit down and make it happen. Instead of just tooling around and then all of a sudden the motivation's gone to record anything.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the barrier to actually creating something is probably the most underrated aspect of being consistent. Is you just got to be able to act fairly quickly. And I think a lot of the content I see from you as well feels like it's inspired just by maybe a thought that you had that day, or then maybe the day prior. It feels like you try to just share a fluid train of thought. Is that your process? Like, do you like to plan things out well in advance, or are you more, this is how I feel, this is what I want to share, let me just go ahead and hit record?
Yeah, so I think the latter. Some of the stuff is planned out, but most of the content that I've had that's done really well has been sort of spur of the moment,
Mm-hmm.
something I've thought about. So one of the things I found that really helps um, is on my iPad, I keep just like a running list of notes, right? So if I have an idea, I pop open a note, I write it down, make a couple of notes on what I think I want to talk about. And you kind of have to get acclimated to the style of content too. Like some people really need a script. They have to have their script because they've got a complicated shot list or whatever. I try to keep it fairly simple. A little bit of B-roll, some talking headshots, not too many transitions, nothing too crazy because again, I have to be efficient. Um, but the running list of notes is super helpful. And then the second thing that's been super helpful for me, not only as a creator, but as a dad, is just journaling. So every night I try to sit down, I have like a gratitude journal. I write down something specific from that day that I'm grateful for, that I'm thinking about, or that I'm struggling with. And a lot of my content comes from that. It's some piece that I'm not sure about, or that, I think might be helpful to somebody. And then again, with a more efficient recording space, I can just sit down and make it. I've gotten to a point now where I can pretty much shoot and edit a full piece of content in about an hour and a half.
Okay.
So, it makes it a lot easier for me to be able to sit down and record something and share it the same day. That's not always the best. If you can batch record, I think that's great. my mind doesn't really work like that where I can sit down and do a bunch of videos at once.
Sure.
I kind of need to soak up the idea before I find a way to articulate it to an audience.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think sometimes that like hyper intentionality can complicate things a little
Mhm.
bit too much.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, and if you can just incrementally create each day, I think that's also a solid approach. I mean, for me personally, that's also something that I just lack and have tried to create more discipline around is if I have an idea, I also tend to write down a lot of things and just compile all of that and then never actually move forward with it because I'm just constantly in thinking and planning mode.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to react is definitely a challenge. But have you also taken inspiration from other creators? I mean, it seems like you've also, like I said, developed a particular style. You have like a nice wide shot, 60 seconds, type of video. Is that stuff that you enjoy also consuming and
Yeah,
words
I
like that?
think it is. Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of the guys that I really follow along with and enjoy. I started out with following Andrew Tu, the guy that started Dadverb. I loved his production style. Really adopted a lot of his work and his sort of look and feel. But lately, I would say some of the big inspirations come from one creators that I stumble across. A lot of them are not quite as big, but some of the bigger ones would be like Tom Noski. I think does some really interesting stuff. I think Kirk. I think it's Kirk Lepiton. I think is his name. He's been doing a lot of Yap style stuff, but he used to be the editor for Peter McKinnon, and so he's sort of broken out on his own. And then there's a couple guys I follow a lot of like EDC, like everyday carry content. So Taylor Martin, who runs Best Damn EDC, he's actually just up the road here in Concord, North Carolina. He's not too far from me.
Oh, nice.
And then Captain Ricky is this guy that used to work with him as well, but has kind of broken out on his own. But I like their kind of look and feel and current spaces. So Brandon Romanchuk is another guy I chat with pretty regularly.
Hmm.
That has I think, some really cool content in the way he's set up and the way he's done it long term. But he's primarily a photographer and has gotten more into videography. But like I said, I really looked for guys that had either a really cool way of shooting or really inspiring messages. And I wanted to find a way to combine those two.
Hmm.
To have like a cool looking shot with good lighting and a good setup, but also, not just talk about like tech and gear and all that. I feel like that can get kind of surface level
Hmm.
and repetitive. I wanted to add a little bit more to it where I was like, okay, this is how I feel. This is what the experience is, or this is what's going on behind content creation, right? Like, this is
Hmm.
what it actually looks like to negotiate a brand deal, or how do I know what to charge, or what do I look for in a contract that says, if I start seeing in perpetuity in the contract, okay, well, that changes how I'm going to charge the client because they're going to own my content forever. They can use it forever without
Hmm.
my say. Um, so that's going to change how much I charge somebody. So as I was learning these things, I was like, how do I bring this into, Instagram or short form to start helping people out who might want to do the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it is that personal experience that I think people are looking for. They want to see real world examples and, maybe somebody in a similar situation. And again, just being able to educate is a powerful way to create content as opposed to, there's a big ocean of people who can review a lens and tell you, about the resolution of a camera or something like that. But yeah, it's a good balance. I like to just find a variety of different creators as well that have a look and feel that I enjoy, but also try to space out some of the things that they're sharing that I consume. So it's not just a sort of repetitive, narrow focus you start to have towards
Yeah.
content because there's so
Yeah.
much different types of stuff out there. Yeah, I mean, because you've taken maybe more of a consistent approach. I think for a while you were your page maybe felt a little bit more like your personal page, and now it's maybe
Hmm.
more intentionally designed for
Hmm.
your personal brand. Have you seen that start to impact your growth, and like what's the
Yeah.
steps you're trying to take to continue building that out?
Yeah, so that's been one of the biggest things is the more I've focused and the more consistent I've been in my messaging and my look and feel and kind of how I present things, kind of finding my flow and what works for me from, balancing the efficiency with the growth piece. I think for me, like I think the biggest my page ever got being inconsistent was like just under 10,000 followers. So I was at like 90. I was at 9,500 for like 2 years. I just got stuck and it just
Okay.
stayed there. And it would not, I could not, no matter what I made, I could not get my page to grow. Um, so I really started evaluating like who I wanted to be, how I wanted to show up, how could I make that consistent and put out videos, not necessarily every day, but at least every other day to start giving the signal to the algorithm like I'm here, my account's moving, how do we make this grow? That was probably 5, 6 months ago. I was around there. And then since there, we've grown the account now to, I think we're just shy of 15,000 followers. So we're like 14.6 or something. I'm starting to see a little bit of stagnation again. So it's like, okay, how do I adjust or double down on the things that are working? And all of that comes to evaluating your analytics, right? Like looking at your pieces. Instagram now, if you get the new analytics update, it will actually rank all of your growth signals per piece, right? So it says
Mm,
they're listed in order of importance. So it's like I think it's like shares, like rate, reshares, and a few like saves is kind of down towards the bottom. So they're actually showing you exactly how they're pushing out your content because they are ranked in order of importance. So starting to look at that and seeing, okay, what's the type of content that gets saved more or shared more? And then basically, what is the format of the content that reaches each different type of audience? So, really starting to dive into like, okay, my reels are for reach, right? Like, that's going to reach the most new people. My carousels kind of reach new people and old people. My stories reach just my audience. My static posts really reach just my audience too and knowing what format I wanted based on the type of audience I was trying to address. Am I trying to grow? Am I trying to address my current audience? Um,
hmm
and then also not looking at my content pieces as one offs. So I think a lot of us get into the trap of thinking like, oh, I got to make something brand new every time, right? If I'm not making something brand new, then what's the point? Like learn how to adapt your content across formats where it's like if I'm talking about something in a reel I can adapt that to a carousel. If I'm talking about something in a carousel I can chat about that more in depth in my stories.
hmm
There's all kinds of ways that you can adapt a piece of content to extend its life. Again, and that goes back to efficiency where it's like I don't have time to make brand new content every single day, but I can find ways to use my old content to continue to drive that
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm working on now is figuring out how that actually works.
Okay.
And it'll change next week.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of experimentation. I feel like you have to take on these platforms because not only is your understanding of how the algorithms and all that type of stuff work, that I think the platforms themselves tend to evolve in ways we're not certain of, and then you have to, dig into certain areas to try different things out. Has that also been so? I don't. I meant to ask you early on. I mean, I see, of course,
Mhm.
all the content you create for yourself and for your audience, but are you also working with clients regularly, building up a business? Is that
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
focus also?
A big part of my focus right now is building one of the most lucrative areas for me has been like UGC content, creating
Mm-hmm.
like high end user generated content for brands. So I've worked with a couple of clothing brands, some bigger names like, Noble and True Classic. I worked with, right now I'm working with Ridge. So like wallets and
Mm-hmm.
EDC content, luggage and all that stuff. So what I'm really trying to do is build up long-term relationships with those brands, right? Which comes down to like, am I delivering on time? Are they having to give me a bunch of feedback and changes? My goal is, it's still, no matter how many times I do it, it's always scary to like send content to a
Mm-hmm.
client.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as it's done, it's like, okay, I had the brief, I had all the information. Does the script work? Do the visuals work? Are they going to accept this? And it's like putting a piece of yourself out there, because like, I put this together, I designed this, I edited this, I want it to perform so we continue to build that business. That's been my most lucrative track so far. Right now, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm starting to work on retainer with some of these brands, where it's just like they pay me a monthly sum. I deliver X amount of videos for them based on kind of their creative briefs or product launches or whatnot. So I'm starting to work on like just stabilizing my income, so that it's just more consistent across the board rather than doing these kind of one-off projects.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm assuming that's also like your maybe your long game is, building up a creative business that can sustain you alongside your social content, but just continuing to expand in that way, I think is a great way to maximize the skills that we as creators tend to repeat over and over again for social platforms. It's something that we can share and utilize for clients as well.
Yeah,
So
views
awesome.
don't pay. Views don't pay. So it's
Exactly.
like
Yeah,
I've
talk
had,
about a
I
long game.
mean,
Yeah.
I've had videos go to, like, I had one video a couple years ago to go to like 2 million views. It was like 2.1 million, gained like 3,000 followers off of it. $0 came from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 2.1 million views, like almost a million viewers, zero money came in from
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Now that does vary by platform. Like YouTube pays out a lot more um, than Instagram, but it's much harder to build a platform over there, so it makes sense. So really, if you want to go like full time content creation, number one, have a plan, right? Like you gotta have some money in the bank. You gotta have a plan. You gotta have some way of bringing that money in. But two, it's like you have to figure out this balance between, yes, I want to share social content, but like when and where might that be valuable to a brand who's going to pay for that type of content. And I'm very fortunate. Like my background is mostly in marketing and social media, so I have a little bit of an unfair advantage where I can kind of understand what they're looking for, how to speak in a pitch email that might put me ahead of some other people, even if I'm not the best filmmaker in the world, even if I'm not the best creator in the world, and I can see all the little things that I could be doing better. Do it well enough so that they're getting consistent content that I can do regularly and deliver well. And then how to pitch them on these other ideas to say, like for Ridge, right? I had an idea. I was like, hey, I'm doing your wallet stuff. My family's going on a vacation next month. I have one of your luggage pieces. I planned on filming with it. Do you want to add a piece to this package, where we talk about the luggage and blah, 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 and how we use it for our family, yada, yada, have a bit of a story? And that was a yes. That was like, oh, you're already working for us. We already like your stuff. Like, go ahead and just add that one on. So that's another big chunk of money to bring in. So it's you kind of need to think about it not just as a creator, but from this side of the brands. What do they need? Why would they pay you to create this rather than paying an agency or paying another creator?
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's really well said. I think more and more people are understanding that the craft of it all is 10% of the factor when it comes to working with these organizations. It's really about giving them a clear vision of the value add.
Hmm.
What's in it for them, what type of return can they get, and then the execution, like you said, it is what it is. It can be that's a scary process in and of itself, but just getting into the door, I think, is a matter of giving them a clear understanding of how you can support them. But also, to your exact point, I think having an online presence, a personal brand, creating social content, that should all just be leverage for proof of concept, like
Yeah,
showing these companies
100%. That's
you
your
can do that.
portfolio.
Yeah. Because that's not gonna. I see so many creators talking about the volume of engagement they get does not translate to financial gain. It's a matter of just trying to leverage your audience and the content you create.
A brand wants to work with you because of your reach or your style or your presentation style. They're going to see something in you that they feel would fit their audience, or your audience aligns with theirs. So if you don't know who your audience is, or who, like, look at your analytics, see who you're reaching, see who's commenting, understand that. And the more you understand that, the better you are positioned to pitch a brand to say, like, look, my audience is primarily males between 35 and 44. They're probably fathers. They probably travel. Maybe they have a little bit more disposable income. Understanding that is going to better position you and give you a much more concrete footing to stand on when you're talking to a brand, because it's not just, hey, send me free stuff and I'll make you a pretty video. Like, that video has to perform, it has to do something, it has to drive to some sort of revenue target. And if you don't understand that, brands aren't going to want to work with you very long, because you're so focused, as you said, on the art and not the output, that it's going to get lost. You're either going to take too long, or it's going to be so complicated, and you're not going to be able to hit on the key messages that you need to support that brand. And that's what they're looking for, is like, they're absolutely content hungry. But you got to be able to hit all the messages in the right amount of time, right tone of voice, right delivery, and then have that portfolio to back it up. And that's going to get you more work than anything.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point, man. I mean, and that's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to start this series, is because, I personally needed more clarity and insight from people that are doing it successfully, of how to steer in an intentional, specific direction. I think right now, I'm new enough in my journey where I'm still all over the place. You talk about not knowing what you want to be when you grow up. I'm in that headspace of, I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that. I have passions in different areas, but being able to drill down or niche down, I think is, also instills a lot of confidence for people that want to work with you, that this is what this person does. I know exactly what I'm going to get from them, as opposed to this
Yeah.
mixed bag of things. So, yeah, definitely something that I've heard a few times, and it is a good takeaway, I think, as well. Yeah, I didn't want to keep you too long today, Ben. I did just kind of want to maybe steer towards the end here, for people that are in a similar situation as you, and maybe situation
Mhm.
isn't the right.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds weird.
No,
People that
situation
are
is fine. I get it.
people that are living a similar lifestyle to you, they have a lot of personal obligations. Life is just as big as a factor as some of their creative goals. Like, what is one important lesson that you would share that you think will allow them to find that footing you mentioned, and be successful down that path?
Yeah, I would say, you know, don't think that you have to have it all figured out to start. One of the biggest things I preach to anybody who is either afraid of showing up on camera, or like, what if people don't like me? You're never going to please 100% of people, right? Like, you're not for everybody, and that's okay. And finding your voice, finding your opinion, your thoughts on things, that's what's going to grow an audience, right? Is people are going to see that, and they're either going to agree with it and hit that like button, or they're going to disagree with it and they're going to leave you a comment. Either way, you're growing your channel. But the reality of it is, like, you're not I still don't ever feel like I 100% have a grasp on knowing exactly what I'm doing. But being willing to figure it out, being willing to be embarrassed, be cringe. Everything I have ever achieved, I've probably been underprepared for. Every job I've ever interviewed for, where they're like, "Hey, all of a sudden you're going to be an executive director now, and you're going to be like leading a team."
Hmm.
I was doing that at 27, right? I was leading a team of people who were much older than me, had more experience than me, and I had no clue what I was doing. And I feel like if you wait to figure it all out, you're never going to start, because you're always going to find a reason to doubt yourself. But the more you do it, and the more reps you get, the more practice you get, the better you're going to feel about it. Again, that's why I was saying at the beginning, like I can shoot, edit, and script a video in probably an hour and a half to 2 hours now. Where in the beginning I was like 12 hours editing something to make it perfect and blah blah blah. I started to realize the things that actually matter and the things that don't. And more than anything, the message and the presentation matter more than, you could shoot it in your car, you could shoot it outside, you could shoot it in your studio, whatever it is. Just make it happen. But be confident enough to start, and then you're going to figure everything out along the way. Just know that you can solve the problems as they come. And that's it. That's the biggest thing, is like it's just solving one problem after another and, learning from it and hopefully not making the same mistake again.
Hmm. That's that's great. I feel like you were speaking directly to me in that final piece there, because yeah, I think that's just also a testament to life itself. Like everything is a continued, phase. Like you said, a sequence of learning new things, figuring things out, trying, and being comfortable with being uncomfortable is how you grow as a person, and grow with your skills as well. So, yeah, very well said. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you hopping on. It's been, like I said, great to follow your process and some of your growth online, but being able to connect with you directly is big help to me in terms of some important things to consider. And also, like you said, just great to have a network and community of people that are living shared experiences. So I think this
I'm glad to be here.
was
It's
great
good.
to have you, man.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap things up today. I really, once again, shout out to Ben Brown, Mr. Mackenzie. Go ahead and follow him on Instagram if you're not already. And definitely, like you said, keep following those steady steps of just trying things out, finding a way to bring balance to your life, and not being afraid to take those steps when you feel that's something you're passionate about and you know you want to work towards. So hopefully you guys can check us out in the next episode. Looking forward to once again, I say this to many of the creators I have talked to so far. Hopefully, Ben, I can circle back with you once we, hit that 100,000
Yeah.
follower mark on Instagram. It'll be nice to see some new things that you can share. So, really appreciate your time, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode.